All right, everyone. Welcome back to the land of Chem. I am your host and the author. My name is Jeffrey Drum. Thank you all so much for joining me again. All right, everyone, welcome back. This is Sunday Site Visit 12, featuring an exploration of the Red Pyramid's final synthesis chamber. But first, a note of clarification that I received on last week's episode discussing the applications for the aqueous ammonia solution product of this structure in a fantastic comment from a YouTube channel called Engineering Past, Present, and Future. And just for good measure, this guy is a Georgia Tech graduate, now retired, with 44 years of experience in the chemical engineering industry. I like the way you think big, but you misidentified the equipment at the oil refinery. But I did recognize some from the satellite view, so I zoomed in and got the name as Calda Petroleum Company, joint venture between EGPC and Apache, to confirm it is an oil and gas production plant. The two wells appear to be a flare and a furnace or incinerator, and the three distillation towers are storage spheres. But your overall point that hydrocarbons are there at the Dashur site seems to be confirmed. Limestone could also be used to neutralize acids, but together with aqueous ammonia would be very effective in treating acids in bitumen. So Al, thank you so much for the clarification and the comment. And I absolutely love this type of feedback, as he confirmed and corroborated the entire point of that video, which is the presence of ancient hydrocarbon deposits in the area, and that the aqueous ammonia solution product of the Red Pyramid would absolutely have applications in the neutralization of acids found in petroleum products and bitumen, whether they be naturally occurring or produced industrially. And I have had a number of individuals contact me recently with extremely impressive academic and professional qualifications in the fields of physics, chemistry, engineering, and chemical engineering, not only in support of my work, but also in offering their assistance in some projects that are already under works behind the scenes. And ladies and gentlemen, just wait until you see what happens when modern fluid and chemical reaction dynamics modeling meets the Egyptian pyramids. So if this is the type of content you're interested in regarding the function of the Egyptian pyramids, please subscribe to the Land of Chem here on YouTube. Click that little notification button, like, comment, and stay tuned. If you want to help support the channel, thelandofchem.com. If you want to follow me on Instagram, my handle is @thelandofchem. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that is it for today's intro. So without further ado, let's get right to it. All right, everyone, here we go with tonight's episode. So before we proceed with the site visit, a quick synopsis of what we have discovered thus far. In the previous site visits from the Red Pyramid, I showed that there are no holes here in the upper reaction vault of the primary steam reformer that are depicted here, here, and here on every diagram of the Red Pyramid, which this particular diagram comes from Frank Monnier, a prolific archaeologist that did some exceptional documentation of the Egyptian pyramids. So unless these holes have been patched up to the point where the quote-unquote restoration is completely indistinguishable, and this is highly unlikely, as usually it is very obvious, this feature here is incorrect in these diagrams. Now, moving on to the secondary air reformer. And I also showed that this series of three holes here, here, and here is actually only two large holes here, and this one on the northern side does not exist. There are also two additional very small holes here closer to the connecting shaft, and they are not depicted on any diagrams of the Red Pyramid. So I am not sure where the inconsistencies in these diagrams are arising, but you can see it for yourself in the footage that I have been presenting. And today, I will be exploring the final synthesis chamber, which you can see here, taking a look at the excavated material that was removed from the connecting shaft and the bottom of the chamber that you can see here, and getting down into this area to examine the pit that now remains. And this is a fantastic model presented in a paper by Frank Monnier showing the results of a 3D photogrammetry project by the French company Iconem in 2018, which I think is exceptional because it shows the staining patterns, the black marker stone, and the quote-unquote robber's hole that you can see here, as they like to call it, which you will also see in the footage. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoy Sunday Site Visit 12. All right, everyone, welcome back to the land of Chem. And I am back here today in Dashur to continue my exploration and investigation of the Red Pyramid. And we have a few objectives for today's expedition. Some additional footage of the housings that were presented in the previous Sunday site visit, and a personal tour, the final synthesis chamber, where the aqueous ammonia solution was being produced. So now, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Yalavina. And I am now inside the secondary reaction chamber inside the Red Pyramid. And we're going to pick up where I left off in the last Sunday site visit. And inside of this chamber, the secondary air reformer, there was a reaction occurring between the hydrogen and carbon monoxide that was produced in the primary reaction chamber, flowed through this connecting shaft and filled this chamber, and the nitrogen and oxygen from the air inside of this chamber. And in the upper reaction vault of this chamber, those four gases, hydrogen, nitrogen, carbon monoxide, and oxygen, were transformed leaving the hydrogen and nitrogen reactants that would then flow into the final synthesis chamber and converting the carbon monoxide and oxygen into water-soluble carbon dioxide, which then dissolved into solution and was removed from this chamber prior to the final stage of the reaction. And you can see that the staining inside of this chamber gets darker and more nebulous as you reach the upper reaction vault, as this is the area where the concentration of the reaction was greatest, the highest temperature and pressure, and thus the most significant amount of staining. And so now we are going to ascend the staircase leading into the final synthesis chamber so we can investigate the housings that I showed in the previous episode. And then we will proceed into the final synthesis chamber, which I have not yet showed on our Sunday site visits. And you can see how dark the staining gets as it moves up the wall into the vaulted reaction chamber, which was specifically engineered to compress those gases to increase their temperature and pressure. All right, and now we are here on the 6th and 7th tier of the upper reaction chamber. And you can see these housings that I showed in the previous episode. And the chisel marks from the process of removing a component out of those housings. And I will be following up on a hypothesis about this removed component in an upcoming research episode. And you can see the significant amount of staining emanating from and around these excavated housings. And this area in particular has the darkest staining. You can see here, leading into the connection passage from the secondary air reformer into the final synthesis chamber. And in my last Sunday site visit inside the Red Pyramid, we concluded with these housings here, which also appear to have been chiseled out. You can see some chisel marks going down in here, and there's a area here. And the chisel marks appear to be fresh on top of the stains. And removing the stains, which would be an indication the stains were there first. The chisel marks were produced in the process of removing whatever was in here. So we have a series of housings here, 1 and 2, directly across from each other in the second reaction chamber on the 6th tier, here and here. This is the second set here and here. So there are 4 holes inside of this chamber, which is incorrectly depicted on almost every single diagram of the Red Pyramid. They have the configuration completely wrong in terms of these housings. So again, 2 here and 2 here. Then on the 7th tier, we have a housing here, connecting passage, and another housing here. And these 2 small housings are directly across from each other as well. On the 7th tier. And then we have this, which is a curved hole through here. You can see here the terminations, here and here. All right, now, resuming our exploration. I just want to point out, this is the area with the most significant staining. So, 6th tier, 7th tier, and 8th tier, leading into the connecting passageway. Now, the connecting passage itself. You can see here, this was the original floor or bottom of the connecting passageway. All of this has been excavated out. You can see the slope angle of the excavated areas here compared to the original side of the passageway. And there was a massive amount of material removed from this structure, not only here in the connecting passage, and you can see the grooves from the tools that were used to remove all of the stone from this area. See, there's more here, and all this has been removed. This is the level of the original bottom of the passage. And then here, into the primary reaction chamber, this level would have remained the same. Moving through this entire chamber. So everything that you see below this line has been excavated out of here. All of this material. And the conventional story goes that there was just a floor, nice flat floor in here, that covered all of this, and there was stone filling this pit. So the question remains, what was so compelling inside of this chamber that they were determined to remove and excavate all of this stone to get down in here? I would propose that it's the original extraction shaft system. They saw that there was a shaft leading out of this chamber, and they were determined to follow that shaft, and excavated the entire pit in the process. And we're going to head down here in just a moment so I can show you this other excavated area here. black marker stone. The western wall. And you can see how dark and nebulous the staining is up here, specifically in the highest portion of the upper reaction chamber within this final synthesis chamber. Man, yeah. The smell of ammonia never ceases to get to you. Now, we're back inside the pit of the final synthesis chamber. And it never ceases to amaze me how quickly people go in and out of this structure. And here is an area of particular interest. This excavated cavity. On the northern wall of the final synthesis chamber. And you can see here the chisels that went into excavating this area back. This is a very clear, rectangular opening here. So now we're looking at the core masonry blocks. And this particular component has always kind of fascinated me because it's shaped like a nipple. You can see the round circle here, the indentation here. This is a circular piece of stone. You can see the edge here. And this block has clearly been worked to a very specific shape, which always just caught my attention. And back here, you can see all of the iron oxide in this core masonry. And what was so interesting that they had to excavate out this entire area? And we're looking for something, or removing something. And I have shown the samples and locations of the staining that were taken from inside this pit, and also presented a comparative analysis looking at the different composition of the staining from the core and the staining from the walls of the reaction chambers. And there's definitely a difference in the chemical composition of the staining found here in the pit in comparison to the staining on the walls, which is indicative of that sealing compound. You can see this piece here is loaded with iron oxide. Coating on the walls is not only iron oxide, also aluminum oxides.
which just so happens to be the same composition of the catalytic material used in the final synthesis chamber of the modern day Haber process. Iron and aluminum oxides.
برافو
Good. شكرا جزيلا.
عفوا
أنا بعيش.
انت تمام عيش براحتك عيش براحتك اوكي شوف انت ما تبص وانت جنتلمان كم
يلا بينا.
كم
All right, everyone, that is it for today's video. This was Sunday Site Visit 12, the Red Pyramid's final synthesis chamber. I really hope you enjoyed today's video, and in the next episode in the series, I will be discussing a structure that you may have never heard of, the Great Enclosure, Gizr el-Mudir. If this is the type of content you're interested in regarding the function of the Egyptian pyramids, please subscribe to the Land of Chem here on YouTube, click the little notification bell, like, comment, and stay tuned. If you want to help support the channel, thelandofchem.com. If you want to follow me on Instagram, my handle is @thelandofchem. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that is it for today's episode, so I will see you next time.
Yo, are you still watching this? Please subscribe to the Land of Chem here on YouTube and click that little notification button. New videos coming out every single week. And check out this other episode. Come on, do it. Do it now.